Hollywood has no shortage of bad boys, but James Franco was a completely different entity. He didn't just want to dominate the screen. He wanted to dominate the public's intellect. In Franco's world, a Golden Globe wasn't enough. He needed master's degrees from Columbia, NYU, and a PhD from Yale. Why would an A-list star, who could earn millions per film, spend 14 hours a day in a library? The answer isn't just academic passion. It was a highly sophisticated personal branding strategy. Franco understood that in a place as vain as Hollywood, intellect is an impenetrable suit of armor. When you are a scholar, a poet, and a university lecturer, the public automatically grants you a default level of respect. You become untouchable. But behind the facade of the bohemian nerd, a manipulation plan was taking shape. Franco wasn't just studying for himself. He used his fame to open doors where he reigned supreme. The period from 2008 to 2013 was James Franco's golden age. He was everywhere, from blockbuster hits to obscure experimental art projects. The public was amazed by his work ethic. How could one person act, write books, exhibit paintings, and teach at prestigious universities all at once? At that time, Franco was considered the darling of critics. He built an eccentric but captivating image, the type of artist willing to push the most sensitive boundaries of art. It was his very commitment that set the stage for later deviant behavior. He began incorporating raw sexual elements into his art projects, turned them into a form of method acting that no one dared to oppose for fear of being labeled ignorant of art. Franco successfully created a labyrinth of trust. Fans, especially young artists, looked to him as a beacon. They believed that to reach the pinnacle of art, they had to accept bizarre requests, even demeaning ones, if they came from Master James Franco. In 2014, a seemingly minor event exposed the true nature of the Hollywood doctor. Lucy Claude, a 17-year-old British student, posted shocking conversation screenshots on Instagram. In them, Franco actively solicited the minor to come to his hotel after a brief meeting at a Broadway stage. How old are you? Who are you with? Should I rent a room? Short messages, but deeply predatory. Franco's reaction at the time? He didn't deny it. He appeared on Live with Kelly and Michael with a sheepish grin, blaming his lack of experience with social media and claiming to be a victim of his own fame. Ridiculous. A 35-year-old man pursuing a PhD at Yale claimed he didn't know that soliciting a 17-year-old girl was wrong, but Hollywood in 2014 was still too forgiving. The public laughed it off, seeing it as a cute mistake by a bohemian artist. This enablement empowered Franco, leading him to believe he had ultimate power over the young people craving his attention. The Instagram incident was just the tip of the iceberg. 2014 was also the year James Franco founded Studio 4, an acting school in New York and Los Angeles. This was where Franco established a private kingdom, where he was a professor, the director, and the gatekeeper of opportunity. Under guise of high art training, Franco created a toxic environment. He organized specialized classes on sex scenes masterclass. There, female students were pressured into participating in raw, non-artistic, and hypersexualized scenes. They were promised roles in Franco's major films. They were gaslit into believing that refusing to undress meant failing to sacrifice her art. They were isolated and afraid because Franco held the keys to their future careers. One former student shared, "We worshipped him. We believed he was a genius. And if he told us to do something weird, it was definitely for the sake of art." Franco used his intellectual star title to turn abusive behavior into a teaching curriculum. He charged students thousands of dollars only to turn them into tools for his predatory instincts. The height of hypocrisy occurred in January 2018. James Franco stood on the Golden Globe stage, beaming as he accepted the award for Best Actor. More notably, he wore a Time's Up pin, the movement against sexual harassment in Hollywood, right on his lapel. This was a devastating blow to his victims. How could a man who directly used his power to oppress women stand there, claiming to be an advocate for justice? This brazen act ignited the fury of the women he harmed. That very night, social media exploded with truth-telling tweets. Sarah Tutter Kaplan, a former student, wrote, "Hey, James Franco, Remember that time you told me to take off all my clothes in a scene despite an agreement not to? Or the time you gagged us? Congrats on the award, hypocrite. But even as the allegations mounted, Franco had a powerful PR team behind him. They began a gaslighting campaign against the public. They claimed these were just bitter students who hadn't succeeded, or people looking to cling to his fame. Franco continued to appear on talk shows, using masterclass acting skills to play a man learning to listen. But in reality, he was just delaying the collapse of the empire he had painstakingly built. Imagine you are a young actor landing in New York or Los Angeles with a heart full of ambition and a bank account nearing zero. You hear that James Franco, an A-list star, a Yale scholar, is opening a school. You believe this is your golden ticket to the Hollywood elite. Little do you know, you have just signed up for one of the most ruthless psychological takeover experiments an artist could devise. Franco did not run studio for like a traditional institution. He operated it like a secular cult, where he was the undisputed high priest and his word was sacred law. To distinguish his brand, Franco introduced specialized masterclasses on sex scenes. This was his laboratory for satisfying predatory instincts under the guise of high art. Within these walls, the boundary between professional training and systemic abuse was erased by a dangerous concept Franco constantly preached: the total sacrifice for craft. In these classes, Franco demanded that female students perform extreme and explicit sexual acts. He weaponized his A-list status to force them past their personal boundaries. If a woman hesitated, his sharp, academic tongue would lash out, mocking her as amateur, uncommitted, or lacking the soul of a true artist. In Franco's world, nudity in front of his lens was never a choice. It was a loyalty test. Sarah Tudor Kaplan, one of the bravest survivors to step forward, revealed chilling details that sent shivers through the public. During a project titled The Long Home, she described how Franco personally directed a massive group scene. He allegedly removed the protective guards from the actresses' sensitive areas and demanded they perform actual sexual acts for the camera. When the women protested, he simply ignored them or used a terrifying, cold silence to intimidate. This wasn't filmmaking. It was a hostile psychological takeover where young women were turned into puppets in a morbid play written and directed by Franco himself. But why didn't they just leave? The answer lies in the absolute cruelty of the Hollywood system that Franco understood perfectly. He held the keys to major roles and prestigious connections. He created an illusion that if you endured these trials, you were being initiated into the elite. Franco turned Studio 4 into a velvet-lined prison where the fear of being blacklisted was stronger than the instinct for self-preservation. He didn't just exploit their bodies, he harvested their dreams. Franco's audacity reached its peak with allegations of a screening system for students seeking his personal attention. Legal filings suggested he frequently requested nude videos or sexualized performances via social media as part of the supposed casting process. He was so intoxicated by his own Ivy League brand that he believed his reputation was an invisible shield, allowing him to commit any act of depravity without consequence. However, the silver walls of Franco's empire began to crack when the Me Too movement swept through Hollywood. As monsters like Harvey Weinstein were dragged into the light, Franco's confidence turned into a quiet, simmering panic. Yet, instead of retreating, he made the most catastrophic PR error in history. He attempted to play the ally. When Franco wore a Time's Up pin at the 2018 Golden Globes, he unwittingly pulled the pin on the grenade that would destroy his career. That act was a physical slap to the faces of the women he had humiliated at Studio 4. It was the moment where the hypocrisy became too loud to ignore. Moments after the ceremony, survivors took to Twitter, exposing the rot behind the glittering pin. The public watched in horror as the man preaching about women's rights on stage was revealed as the same man who coerced the students into explicit acts in the shadows of unlicensed classrooms. The fallout was swift and agonizing. James Franco was erased from the Oscar conversation for his film The Disaster Artist, a movie many believed would finally earn him the gold. Film offers evaporated. Prestigious universities began quietly scrubbing his name from faculty lists. Even his closest inner circle, the kings of Hollywood comedy, began to keep a safe distance. Seth Rogen eventually issued a somber statement that he had no future plans to work with Franco effectively ending one of the most powerful creative brotherhoods in the industry. In 2019, a class action lawsuit was filed by former Studio 4 students. Hundreds of pages of legal documents painted a sickening picture of systemic power abuse. Franco was accused of sexual exploitation, fraud, and creating a hostile work environment. After years of legal posturing, in 2021, James Franco agreed to a $2.2 million settlement. While that sum is a drop in the ocean for a millionaire star, it serves as a permanent biological retirement for his moral standing. In a rare subsequent interview with Jess Cagle, Franco admitted to a sex addiction and confessed to sleeping with his students. But listen closely to the phrasing. He blamed his lack of awareness. He blamed his addiction, and he offered not a single word of genuine apology for the souls he crushed. He still attempted to use psychological jargon to frame himself as a victim of his own internal impulses. This is a hallmark of a master manipulator. Even in defeat, he tries to control the narrative. The downfall of James Franco is a grim reminder of the danger of idolizing an individual based on a manufactured intellectual persona. He used knowledge as a weapon, art as a shield, and fame as bait. Studio 4 was never a school. It was a monument to Franco's massive and pathological ego. After the layers of intellectual prestige and aesthetic glamour were stripped away at Studio 4, James Franco didn't just face a public boycott. He had to confront the brutal emptiness of the very system he once arrogantly ruled. This is not merely a story about a celebrity being canceled. It is a forensic study of how a gargantuan ego systematically crushed itself under the unbearable weight of its own lies. Imagine the internal landscape of a man once hailed as a modern Renaissance figure, a man who could lecture at Yale one day and fly to Hollywood for an Oscar nomination the next, now sitting in the sterile silence of legal mediation rooms. The $2.2 million settlement Franco agreed to pay in 2021 was never just a financial transaction. In the world of the elite, it served as an unofficial confession. It was the price paid to buy silence. But ironically, that very silence created the most deafening echoes regarding his true character. Franco attempted a calculated biological retirement from the spotlight, betting on the hope that public memory would be as short-lived as a social media trend. He retreated into the shadows, claiming to seek treatment for sex addiction as a convenient umbrella explanation for his predatory behavior. But the public of 2026 is no longer easily manipulated by such cheap psychological tropes. When you weaponize your professional status to trade career opportunities for the physical submission of young, vulnerable students, that isn't a medical condition. It is a calculated choice made by a predator operating with total impunity. The forensic autopsy of Franco's career reveals a startling and profound isolation. His closest allies, the very people who helped him build billion-dollar comedy empires, chose a path of clinical detachment. Seth Rogen, his most loyal creative partner, issued a chillingly definitive statement claiming he had no future plans to collaborate with Franco. This was a fatal blow to Franco's rebranding efforts. When even those who know you best refuse to stand in your corner, the world understands that the rot isn't just on the surface. It has reached the very marrow of the bone. Looking back at the trajectory from the charming rebel in Spider-Man to a pariah of the film industry, we see a classic Icarus model. Franco flew too close to the sun of his own arrogance. He believed he was smarter than the system, convinced that he could redefine moral boundaries through pretentious lens of art for art's sake. He transformed classrooms into velvet-lined prisons, where young women were gaslit into believing that sacrificing their dignity was the mandatory admission price for greatness. In reality, they were merely fueling the pathological narcissism of a middle-aged man lost in intoxicating fumes of his own power. In this final act of our indictment, we must pose a satirical question. Was James Franco ever truly a multi-talented artist, or was he simply a highly educated fraud? Examining his string of bizarre art projects, disjointed books, and incomprehensible experimental films, it becomes clear that these were often smoke screens designed to mask a profound moral deficit. He used Ivy League degrees as a bulletproof vest, operating under the delusion that a man who recites poetry and writes essays could never be viewed as a common deviant. It is the ultimate absurdity of the elite, where intellect is weaponized to perform hostile psychological takeovers on the marginalized. Currently, Franco is attempting a quiet crawl back through European projects and low-budget independent films. But every time a name James Franco appears on a poster, it no longer evokes the image of an eccentric genius. Instead, it carries the stench of scandal and the betrayal of trust. His legacy is no longer defined by transformative performances, but by thick legal files and the agonizing testimonies of survivors whose dreams he methodically dismantled. Hollywood may forgive failure, but it rarely forgets the man who turned the hope of young talent into a cheap commodity for personal gratification. The downfall of James Franco serves as a razor-sharp reminder of the danger of absolute power. Wealth and fame can build magnificent castles, but if the foundation is laid upon exploitation and deceit, the collapse is mathematically inevitable. Franco has entered the void of irrelevance, an unwanted but entirely earned retirement. He stands as living proof that in the grand play of life, no amount of prestigious degrees or artistic awards can salvage a soul that is rotted from the inside out. We close the file on James Franco here, a man who had everything: talent, looks, intellect, and influence, but chose to become a parasite on the aspirations of others. His story will remain in the Society Noir archives as a permanent warning about the corruption of the elite. Remember, in the world of high-gloss glamour, the things that sparkle the most are often the most toxic. Thank you for joining us on this bitter psychological dissection. It is our hope that after watching this, whenever you see an intellectual icon on your screen, you won't just look at their credentials or their flowery rhetoric. You will look deeper into the tangible actions behind the velvet curtain. Because the truth always has a way of surfacing, no matter how many layers of silver or artistic justification are used to bury it. James Franco chose the ultimate exit of shameful silence, and perhaps that is the most honest piece of performance art he has ever produced. Farewell to a monument that toppled itself. Welcome to the raw reality where there is no room for predators dressed in artist clothing. Stay tuned for our next indictment, where we will explore who else is destined to face the cold, unforgiving judgment of history.